Percentages is one of the most important building blocks when it comes to preparing for the quant section. So in this video, what we are going to do is we are going to look at 10 questions that are very interesting to solve, and they will also form the building blocks of your preparation. So once you solve these questions, you will be able to migrate to better, more difficult questions from percentages. So make sure that you solve these questions on your own first and then have a look at the solution that's going to follow. And do let me know in the comment section if you have any doubts, queries, or something that you're not able to do. The entire set of 10 questions should not take you more than 25 minutes to solve. So just time yourself accordingly, not more than 2.5 minutes per question. And I think you should be fine. So do try it out on your own and then have a look at all the solutions that are going to follow. Check out this question on your own and then you can have a look at the solution. So there are 50 successive percentage discounts given in a series of 2%, 4%, 6%, 8% and so on. You have to figure out what is the net discount. Now you know that there are 50 successive percentage discounts. So the first discount is going to be 2%. Now what does this mean? Let's say the article was priced at 100 rupees. As soon as you give a discount of 2%, now it becomes 98 rupees. Now you are going to give a second discount of 4%. You are going to get a discount of 4% on 98 rupees. So it's going to be 98 into 0.96. That is going to be the fresh marked price now. Again, you give a discount of 6% on this fresh mark price and the series keeps on progressing. You have to understand one small thing here. The 50th successive percentage discount is going to be 100%, which means that whatever is the marked price, the entire thing will be waived off and you will end up getting it for free. So in this particular case, the net discount is going to be option C, that is 100%. Discount cannot be greater than 100%. You can't sell something at such an amount of loss that you will have to pay someone to buy that particular thing. That doesn't work. So what you have to do is you have to understand the maximum possible discount, that is going to be 100% in this context, and that is going to happen when the 50th slab is open and everybody is going to get it for free once the 50th successive percentage discount slab is applied. Let's look at this question. So try this out on your own and then you can have a look at the solution. Now assuming percentage to be true for all the real values, which of the following can be true? If 40% of A is equal to 60% of B, then what can happen? Now we can just put it mathematically and see 40%, 40 by 100 times A is going to be equal to 60 by 100 times B. Now what we get here is we will be able to cancel out the two zeros from the denominator, and I'll be able to cancel out two zeros. I'll be able to remove 2 from both the left hand side and the right hand side, and I am going to get the value of 2A equals 3B. Or I will be able to say that A is going to be equal to 1.5 times B. So whatever is B, A will be magnified 1.5 times. Now there are three things that can happen in this particular context, and if you check for all these three, you will be able to handle it nicely. The first thing you'll be able to understand is this equality will be established when A and B are both equal to 0. So if A equals B equals 0, then this identity will be fine. It will not be a problem. So option 3 or the third statement is definitely going to be true. What if we are talking about positive numbers? If B is a positive number, let's say B is 10. If B is equal to 10, then A will be equal to 15 into 10, that is, or 1.5 into 10, that is 15, which tells us that A can also be greater than B. Now it is defined for all real numbers, so positive numbers are also under the ambit of this particular condition. So A greater than B definitely is going to be possible. So 1 is also going to be possible. So 1 and 3 are both going to be possible. We'll also test for 2, but 1 and 3 are both possible. So definitely this cannot be my answer. This cannot be my answer. So my answer is going to be either option C or option D. Now let's look at negative numbers. What happens if B is a negative number? Let's say B is equal to minus 10. Now in this case, what will happen? If B is equal to minus 10, then A will be equal to 1.5 into minus 10, which is going to be minus 15. Now in this case, is minus 10 the greater number or minus 15 the greater number? You will be able to say that minus 10 is the greater number, which means that B can also be greater than A. And because of this, all three should be possible, which means that the correct answer here is going to be option D, that is none of these. Let's look at this question now. Try this out on your own and then you can have a look at the solution. Try not to use the calculator for this one. That is one thing that I will tell you before you kind of start solving this. So Sean wishes to buy an air conditioner with the money in the bank, which currently is earning interest at the rate of 15% per annum compounded annually. So 15% per annum, there is annual compounding that is present here. However, Paul, his friend, forecasts that the inflation rate applicable to AC is going to be 14%, 15% and 16% respectively for the next 3 consecutive years, and advises Sean to postpone the purchase by 3 years. Now, what Paul is telling Sean is that instead of what you can do is you can just put your money in the bank, let it run for 15% per annum compounded, because what is going to happen is the AC is going to increase by, the prices of the AC are going to increase by 14%, 15% and 16% in the successive years that we have. So according to Paul, it makes a lot of sense for Sean to buy it 3 years down the line, because the interest that you are going to generate is going to be greater than the inflation that would have happened in terms of the price of the air conditioner. So for example, let's say, I will give you a simpler example. Let's say you want to buy a phone of 10,000 rupees today. But what you are saying is, let's say for example, 10,000 rupees if you keep in a bank, it's going to grow at 10% per annum, which means you are going to get 11,000 rupees. But this phone will undergo inflation of 6%, let's say, and tomorrow if you want to buy this phone, or maybe 1 year later you want to buy this phone, you will have to spend 10,600. So now if you spend your entire money on buying this phone, then you are not left with anything. But if you make the decision of purchasing the phone 1 year later, you will still be left with 400 rupees in your pocket in spite of buying the same phone. So that's why Paul is advising Sean to defer his purchase by another year. Now let's see if it makes sense or not. So what is happening in case of the first individual? Now in case of the first scenario, let's say 15% per annum is the rate of interest. So let's say Sean has M amount with him. Now what will happen is, in the next year it will become 115 by 100, because 15% per annum it will increase by 15% per annum, which means it will become 115 by 100. In the next year it is again going to become 115 by 100 of itself multiplied by 1.15. After 3 years it is going to give me again multiplied by 115 by 100. So this is the potential value or return that I am going to get. And what about the potential price? If we look at the potential price of the AC 3 years down the line, so today if he buys the AC, then he will have to pay the same amount that he has. But what is going to happen next year? The price of the AC is going to increase by 14%, which means 114 by 100 will become my multiplying factor. The next year is going to increase by 15%, 115 by 100 becomes my multiplying factor, and the year after that it is going to increase by 16%, which becomes 116 by 100. Now we have to understand one small thing. See, this part is common to both these particular calculations. M is of course common. We have to figure out, is 115 times 115 greater than or less than or equal to 114 by 116. That is what I need to figure out. Now, instead of calculating the entire thing and using a calculator, what you can say is, this is nothing but 115 plus 1 multiplied by 115 minus 1. That is what this looks like. So we have two parts here. We have 115 plus 1 and 115 minus 1 that are present here. And that will make our life much easier, because the expansion of this is going to be 115 square minus 1. Left hand side is 115 square, right hand side is 115 square minus 1, which means that by the barest of margins, the left hand side is winning this particular deal, which means that the potential value is going to be greater than the potential price. Potential value is going to be greater than the potential price, which means that whatever Paul is saying makes sense, because at the end of 3 years, Sean will be able to buy the AC and will also have some money left over because of a better rate of interest compared to the inflation. So will Sean gain momentarily or monetarily? Rather, yes, Sean will definitely gain monetarily if he takes Paul's advice. Now, if you look at this particular question, try this and then have a look at the solution. The number of students present in the class of 0.99 is M. And out of those M students, 22.1875% are golds. If the number of golds in the class is N, then what can be the minimum value of M plus N? So try this out on your own and then you can have a look at the solution. Now let's think about this. We know that the number of students present in the class of 0.99 is M, right? So M people are there, so that I have to consider anyway. Out of those M, 22.1875% are golds. So what is the value of N here? It is going to be 22.1875% of m, these are golds. So m plus n will basically be this. Now I need to ensure that this is going to give me an integer. So how do I get an integer? That is what I need to figure out. So I'll just try to remove this decimal here and try to find out what can be the value of m, so that I will be able to cancel out stuff from the numerator and the denominator. So let's see. So I'm left with 221875. Now because I have shifted the decimal by 4 points, I will have to add 4 zeros here in the denominator. Now, however awkward it might seem, you will have to kind of do this calculation to get to the answer. So let's cancel out a 25 from the numerator and the denominator, because 75 is going to be a multiple of 25. So I'm going to get 25 fours are 100, followed by 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros. What about this one? 25 eights are 200. I'm left with 2, 1, 8. Again 25 eights are 200. 1, 8, 7. 25 sevens are 175. 1, 2, 5. And that tells me 25 fives are 125. Again, I will be able to remove a 25 from the numerator and the denominator. So I'm going to get 25 ones are 25. 150, 25 sixes are 150, followed by 2 zeros. What about this one? I'm going to get 25 threes are 75, 137, 25 fives are 125, 125 again, 25 fives are 125. I will be able to cancel out a 5 from the numerator and the denominator. So 1600 divided by 5, 5 threes are 15, 5 twos are 10, 5 zeros are 0, and I'm going to get a 71 that is present here. So my answer here is going to be m plus 71m by 320, because I cannot reduce the numerator and the denominator any further. So my answer is going to be 71m by 320 plus m. Now if I just simplify this, I am going to get 320m plus 71m, that is 391m by 320. What is the minimum value of this? The minimum value of this will happen when m is minimized as much as is possible. But to make this an integer, I will have to have the value of m as 320 at minimum. And when that happens, what is going to be my answer? My answer is going to be 391. So the minimum number of the minimum value of m plus n in this case is going to be 391 for this question. In this question, again, there is a lot of interesting information that is present. So do have a look at it. Again, this is not something for which you will have to sit and calculate a lot of stuff. You just have to figure out what exactly has been asked and what can be done with the information that has been provided. So there are 4 contestants, A, B, C, and D in the assembly election from the Bihar constituency. It is given that none of the contestants got less than 1% of the valid votes. So everybody got at least 1% of the valid votes. Now there are these 4 statements that have to be considered in isolation to each other. As in, I will only look at statement 1 disregarding statements 2, 3, 4. Again, I will look at only statement 2 disregarding statements 1, 3, and 4, and so on and so forth. With how many of the following statements, when used independently, is it possible to find out the winner of the election? So A got 49% of the total valid votes. Will I be able to find out the winner of the equation? Let's see. If A got 49%, I will have to minimize the votes of 2 other contestants so that the third contestant gets as much as is possible. Now we know that every individual gets 1% vote at the very least. So let's say A got 49%, B got 1%, C got 1%. That leaves me with 49% for D as well. So it could have been very well a tie, and we don't really know what to do in case of a tie. So statement 1 is not going to tell us who won the election. A and D could have got an equal number of votes in this case. So we cannot really say from this statement who would have won the election. B got 55% of the total valid votes. Whatever else happens, it doesn't matter, because the second best person at best, even if everybody else gets a 0, can get only 45% votes. So statement 2 will definitely be able to tell us who is going to be the winner of this particular election. C got 46% of the total valid votes. Now, if I cannot say that whether A won the election or not with 49% votes, I'll definitely not be able to say who won the election if C got 46% of the votes. Because if C gets 46%, let's say, A gets 1%, B gets 1%, then in that case, we are going to get D winning the election by 52% votes. But if C gets 46%, let's say, A gets 20%, B gets 20%, and D gets 14%. then C would have won the election. So we can't really say who would have won the election on the basis of statement 3. And if you know, if 49% can't tell us who the winner is, 46% or 48% will definitely not be able to tell us who the winners are going to be, or who the winner is going to be rather. So if D is 48, let's say A is 1, let's say B is 1, that leaves us with 50% for C. In this case, C wins the election. Or if I'm saying that this is 48, again let's go with 20 and 20 and 12. I know that D is going to win the election. So depending on the split, we will be able to say that maybe D wins or C wins or A wins or B wins, we don't know. So in this particular case, only statement 2, only one statement is good enough to tell us who is the winner of the election if used independently. In this particular question, it's very, very interesting. Try this out, and it's a very nice question. So just try it out and then you can have a look at the solution. In a laboratory experiment, a sample of air, which is a mixture of oxygen and water vapor. Now, we are not really talking about scientifically correct, accurate things here. We are just saying that, okay, air exists and there are two components that are present in air. One is oxygen, one is water vapor. Water vapor contains hydrogen and oxygen gases. So there are two things in water vapor as well. So one is pure oxygen, the other is a mixture that has some part oxygen. If air contains a total of 70% oxygen, including that contained in water vapor. So air entirely contains 70% oxygen, whereas water vapor contains 16.66% of oxygen by weight. So I will just put it here. I will just put oxygen, that is one component of air. The other component of air is water vapor. And cumulatively, they form air. Now, if I look at the concentration of oxygen and water vapor here, first thing you have to understand is because this is oxygen, the concentration of oxygen here is 100%. In water vapor, if you look at it, what is the percentage of oxygen? It is 16.66. And we know that air contains 70% oxygen in total. Now we can see that we are talking about weighted averages here. So let's try to put it in the form of numbers and see what happens. So first I'll write O2 here. Now I will write VW here. Now O2 is 100%, water vapor is 16.66%, which is 1 by 6th, or you can say 100 by 6 in a way. Now if this is 100 by 6, what can I say about 70? 70 is going to be 420 by 6. What can I say about 100? It's going to be 600 by 6. Now if I apply the alligation rule, I'm going to get 420 minus 100, that is 320 here, and 600 minus 420, that is 180 here. So I know that if there are 320 parts of oxygen that are present in air, then 180 parts of water vapor should be present in air. So we know that out of 500 grams of air, 320 plus 180, we know that 180 grams is basically going to be water vapor. We have to figure out what happens if there is 1 kg of air, or what if there are 1000 grams of air that are present. So 180 into 2 is what we have to do. So we'll get 360 grams. Now in terms of kilograms, it's going to be 360 by 1000 or 0.36. So the correct answer is option B, that is 0.3. Let's look at this question now. 1000 people voted on a resolution with 10% of the votes being invalid. So 10% of the votes were invalid. So if 100 people voted, basically 10 votes were invalid. And only 90 contributed to the entire scenario of who won and who lost and what exactly happened. After some discussion, 1000 people voted again. This time there were 20% invalid votes. So 800 votes were counted now. The opponents were increased by 50%, while the motion was now rejected by a majority, which is 300% more than it was formerly passed by. So earlier it was passed and now it has been rejected. So that is what we know here. How many people voted against the resolution after the discussion? So slightly difficult question. It will take some effort for you to understand what has been given here and put it on paper in terms of equations. But once you do that, it's a very easy question. So let's see what has happened here. So try this out. I think you will take more than average amount of time to solve this. But if you are able to solve it within 2.5 minutes, great. So let's see. So in the first case, so there is resolution 1 and there is resolution 2. And we know there are people who are in favor of passing these resolutions and there are people who are against passing these resolutions. So in this case, if you look at it, the first time what happened was 900 people's votes would have been counted because 10 were invalid, but 90% had to be valid. And in the second case, 20% were invalid, which means 800 votes were valid. Now we know that there is something happening from 1 to 2. So let's say, for example, in the first case, X people voted in favor of resolution in the first round, which means that 900 minus X people would have voted against this particular resolution. There is no one who is voting in favor and against. No, there are people who are voting in favor or they are not voting, which means they're against the resolution. So it's a binary thing that we have here. What is happening in round 2? The opponents were increased by 50%. So earlier it was passed, but now the opponents have increased, which means that 900 minus X has increased by 50%, or it has become 1.5 times 900 minus X. That is what we have here. While the motion was now rejected by a majority, so the majority of the people rejected the motion. So earlier the motion was passed and now the motion has been rejected. So the boxes tell me which one is the dominant party. We also know that now it was rejected by a majority which is 300% more. 300% more means what? Let's say I have 100 rupees and you have 400 rupees. You have 300 rupees more than my 100 rupees, which means you have 300% more than what I have. But if I were to talk about how much do you have 4 times of what I have. So whatever was the margin of victory here between these two people, this margin has been amplified to 4 times. It has increased by 3 times, but which means that it has become 4 times. So let's see if this is 1.5 into 900 minus X, what can be this value? 1.5 into 900 minus X is going to be 1350 minus 1.5X. I need this number and this number to add up to 800. So how can I do that? 1350 is already present here, but I need 800 here. So what it will mean is I will need to subtract 550 from 1350. Also, I have minus 1.5x here. If I have a positive 1.5x here, once I add these two, minus 1.5x plus 1.5x will cancel each other out, and I'll be left with 1350 minus 550, which is again going to give us 800. So these were the number of votes that were cast against the resolution, and these were the votes that were cast in favor of the resolution. So now we just need to figure out what was the difference earlier, and 4 times of that is now the difference in the second case. So the difference in the first case is X minus 900 minus X. So we are talking about the difference, we're not talking about how many votes did the winner get. No, the winner won by a margin of. So if I get, let's say, 60 votes in an election and you get 50 votes in an election, I have won the election by a margin of 10 votes. That is what we say. Now 4 times of this, because 4 times the old margin is the new margin. What is the new margin here? Now against people have 1. So 1350 minus 1.5x minus 1.5x minus 150. This is what I need to figure out. So I am going to get 4 times x minus 900 minus of minus x. So 4 into 2x, that is going to give us 8x minus 4 into 900, that is 3600, will be equal to 1350 minus of minus 550, which is 1350 plus 550, which is going to give us 1900. Minus 1.5x minus 1.5x will give us minus 3x. If I shuffle the terms, 8x and 3x will come together to give us 11x here, and 3600 will go to the right hand side, get added to 1900 to give us 5500. Therefore, the value of x becomes 5500 by 11, that is 500 itself. The question is, how many people voted against the resolution after the discussion? So the answer is going to be 1.5 into 900 minus x. 900 minus x is 400. 1.5 into 400 is 600. So the correct answer here should be option D, that is 600. Is there a better way to solve this? Of course there is a better way to solve this. So those of you who stuck around till now, there is a beautiful solution to this. See what is happening. In the second case, the resolution is getting rejected by a majority, which means that the number of people rejecting the resolution has to be greater than the number of people favoring the resolution. If 400 people reject the resolution, then how many are in favor? 400 people. If 200 people reject, then 600 people are in favor. If 300 people reject, then 500 people are in favor. In all the 3 cases, you don't really have the rejectors winning this particular battle. And that's why option A, B, C cannot be my answers. My answer has to be option D. So this is something that you can solve using options, but I don't know if this will be the first thing that will come to your mind. If it comes, great. But even if it doesn't, the equation based method is still fine, still manageable. But reading the question creates so much of confusion in your brain that you will not be able to look at the options and solve this at all. Let's look at this question. There is an index of 12 shares and there are Reliance, HUL and Infosys that are available. You just have to figure out what exactly is happening here. So try this out and then you can have a look at the solution. Now there is an index of 12 shares that is present. And we know that Reliance, HUL and Infosys are present here. And the weights of these are 7, 13 and 15. So let's say for example, the index consists of 1000 rupees or 10,000 rupees, let's say for example. Reliance is 700 rupees. HUL is 1300 rupees and Infosys is 1500 rupees, which means that the total in this case is going to be nothing but 7% is 700. So what is 100%? It's going to be 100, 100 or 10,000. So what about the remaining shares that we have? So these three will add up to 13 plus 7, that is 2000 plus 1500 is 3500. So the remaining will be 6500. Now we know that the increase of Reliance, HUL and Infosys is 9, 10 and 4%. If this increases by 9%, it will increase by 63 rupees. 763 will be the value. 1300 increases by 10%, it will increase by 130 or 1430 will be its new value. Infosys will increase by 4%, it will increase by 60 rupees. 1560 will be its new value. The overall, the index rises by 6%, which means that instead of 10,000, 1% of it is of course 100. So 6% is going to be 600, which means that the index will be at 10,600. Now we have to figure out what is the remaining part. So in this particular case, I am increasing something by 63, something by 130 and something by 60. So what is the increase here? I am saying 130 plus 63 is 193, 193 plus 60 is 253. But the increase has happened by 600, which means that the remaining would have grown by what amount? 600 minus 253, which is 347. So I have seen a growth by 347 on a base of 6500, and I should now be able to answer this particular question. So I'll be able to cancel out the two zeros from here. I'm left with a 347 by 65. I can either just figure out what is the division of 347 by 65, or I can cancel out a 5, I can cancel out a 13, and I can still manage it. So let's see what we can do in this particular case. Let's try to cancel out a 5 and see what happens. If we cancel out a 5 from the denominator, I'm getting a 13. What is 347 divided by 5? 5 6s are 30, I'm left with a 47, 5 9s are 45, I'm left with a 20. So 5 4s are 20. So 69.4 divided by 3. I know 13 5s are 65, so this is fine. I am left with a 44. So 4 4 44, 13 3s are 39. I'm left with a 50, 13 approximately 4 gives me 52. So my answer here is going to be option A, that is 5.34%. Let's look at this one. Very interesting question. Try this out on your own and then you can have a look at the solution. Now the pollution in normal atmosphere is less than 0.01%. But due to the leakage of methyl isocyanide from a factory, which is disastrous, the pollution is increased to 20%. The pollution is increased to 20%. Now it has become 20% of the overall thing. If every day 80% of the pollution in the atmosphere is neutralized, in how many days will the atmosphere become normal? So normal should be less than 0.01%. Now 80% is neutralized, meaning that the pollution that remains is 20% of what it was on the previous day. So to start with, it was 20%. What happens after one day? It becomes 1/5 of 20, which means at the end of day 1, it is going to be 4%. What about at the end of day 2? 4 into 1 by 5, the pollution has now become 0.8. Again 0.8 into 1 by 5, my answer is going to be 0.5. 1s are 5 and 30, so 5 6s are 30. So now it has become 0.16 of itself. Again, I take 1/5 of it. So at the end of day 1, we were here. At the end of day 2, we got this. At the end of day 3, we got this. At the end of day 4, we are going to get 0.032. But it is still more than 0.01%. That is what we have here. Now I'll again multiply this by 1 by 5 and whatever I'm going to get, and this is percentage term, so I just have to look at 0.01. I'm going to get 0.0064. This is definitely less than 0.01%. So after 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days, I will be able to say that the atmosphere would have become normal. So the correct answer here is option A, that is 5 days. Let's look at this question. Very interesting question. So try this out and then you can have a look at the solution. So the marks obtained by Rahul in VARC, DILR, QA and GK in CMAT are as follows. Maximum marks per subject is 100. The marks obtained in DILR is 1.5 times the marks obtained in VARC. So let's write down everything here. We have VARC, we have DILR, we have QA, and we have GK. The marks obtained in DILR is 1.5 times the marks obtained in VARC. So if VARC he had scored 2x marks, in DILR he would have scored 1.5 into 2x or 3x marks. Now you realize why I took 2x here instead of x, because if I would have taken x here, this would have been 1.5x. I don't like dealing with decimals, so let's keep it as 2x and 3x. Rahul got 64% in all these 4 subjects, which basically means that if the maximum marks is 100 and there are 4 subjects, his total score should be 64 by 100 into 400. Right, because there are 400 marks and he scored 64%, which is 64 into 4, that is 256. So the total score that Rahul got was 256. So we have taken care of this and this. Rahul got the maximum and the minimum marks in QA and GK. So this was the maximum marks and GK had the minimum marks with a difference of 48 marks between them. So let's say, for example, if GK was Y, then QA should have been 48 plus Y. That is the logic, and 48 plus Y was the highest score. An addition of 50% of the marks obtained in VARC. If he had scored 50% more marks in VARC, it would have given him an overall percentage of 70. Now overall percentage of 70 out of 400, 70% out of 400 marks is going to be 280, which is a growth by 24 marks. But we have been told that this would have been possible had the VA score grown by 50%. So instead of 2x, if 3x would have happened, then definitely you would have got 70% marks overall, which means that the jump from 2x to 3x is 24 marks, which also tells me that 2x and 3x are separated by 24, which means x is 24. So the score in VARC has to be 48 marks. What about DILR? The score in DILR has to be 72 marks. So now we have got 48 and 72 here. So that is something that we have got. 48 plus 72 is going to give me 120 marks. Now the score that he had got was 256. If 120 marks have come from here, what has come from here? I know that QA plus GK is going to be 136. But I also know that QA is 48 plus Y, GK is Y. So I can just write 48 plus Y equals 136, or I'll be able to say that 2Y is equal to 88, or I will be able to say that Y is equal to 44. So in this case, GK will be 44 and QA will be 44 plus 48, that is 92. What would be his percentage if only DILR and QA marks are counted? So if you just count DILR and QA, you are going to get 72 plus 92, that is 164 marks. And if you are getting 164 marks here out of the 2 subjects that we have, so 164 out of 200 is going to give you a percentage of 82, and that's why the correct answer to this particular question is option B, that is 82%.